Our next presenter is Scott Galloway. Scott is an outreach specialist with the Texas Water Development Board. He promotes TWDB's state and federal financial assistance programs and helps utilities and communities find options for financing water-related infrastructure. Scott has over 3 decades of experience with utility, infrastructure, operations, and management, including water resources, planning, capital improvement programs, construction, project management. He holds a Bachelor of Science from Texas State University and is a licensed water and wastewater operator. Please welcome Scott Galloway.
Okay, thank you. Welcome to talk about financial assistance programs available from the Water Development Board. How many people have used Water Development Board funding in the past? A few of you, good. That's wonderful. Well, this morning, we're going to talk about just the overall process of funding available through Water Development Board programs. I'm going to talk to you about some tips and tricks, timelines, but the main thing I want you to know is we always have some funding available. The Water Development Board has some money every year. The big thing to know is we function on a state fiscal year cycle, an annual cycle. And so we'll talk about those details, but know that we always have some funds. We always have a 100% low interest loan that's available. That's a pretty easy program to get into. We'll talk about that. Have grants occasionally or frequently. We'll talk about those. Those are definitely our most popular programs. And then I'll talk to you about how you can stay informed on timelines and updates in the future. But again, I'm Scott Galloway, financial assistance, outreach specialist, been with the agency many years. As you know, Water Development Board's a non-regulatory state agency. We do a couple of things to meet our mission of ensuring Texans are going to have adequate water supplies. And the main thing one thing that we do to meet our mission is we provide financial assistance programs. I have several copies of this booklet. This booklet's available online. It's also down in the exhibit hall at our agency booth. But this is a great little summary of the available programs that are available through TWDB. The other thing that we do to meet our mission is we produce the state's water supply plan and then state flood plan. So we're water resource planners, and then we function as a bank for water-related infrastructure projects. So that's 2 or 3 ways of how we meet our mission. Talk about the financing that we offer, and then again, how you can apply for funding in the upcoming funding cycles. The previous speaker was Mark Mathis talking about water audit. And many of our programs start with data through like water loss audits, water use surveys, water conservation plan reporting. This little graphic is a wonderful example of how the water droplet moves through the process. So it starts with good data from typically the water operator sector for water use, loss, and water conservation. That information is your information, but it also helps Water Development Board with our planning processes. That type of data feeds directly into the water supply planning process. It's also important when it comes to financial assistance programs. Water utilities have to submit these self-reporting data annually to the Water Development Board if there are 3,300 connections or greater. If there are fewer than that, they report every 5 years. But that is really critical data. Remember the old saying, good data in or garbage in, garbage out. It's really important that we get good quality data from the local drinking water systems. Anytime you receive a survey form or information request from the Water Development Board, please send it in to us, fill it out and send it in to us, because we do use the information. It's critical to our planning processes. So we have good data. Good data leads to better planning, better financing, and better policy. So it all starts with that good data process. Again, we produce the state water plan and the state flood plan. We'll talk about those in a few minutes. And all that leads into financing. And that's my specialty, is the funding programs that we offer. The funding programs are available to political subdivisions of the state. So it's going to be any public entity, city, county, river authority, districts, nonprofit water supply corporations. Typically, it's someone who's providing a public service, public either wastewater or drinking water service. Why do communities come to us? Obviously for the grants. Those are by far our most popular programs, grants for water-related infrastructure. Then also low interest loans. All of our programs are subsidized either by state or federal dollars. So coming to the Water Development Board will be the cheapest financed money that you can probably obtain as a local community or local system. I talk about political subdivisions, but I also use the names community or system or utility all kind of interchangeably. That's typically, though, your local system that's providing, again, the water or wastewater service. But you can see different examples of cities, districts, even water authorities, and the estimated cost savings that we do a calculation at our fund closing to show what the community would save as compared to going out to a private lender or a local bank. How does it work? If you're a city, this is required. If you're a city, you have to issue bonds. Water Development Board will be a direct purchaser of those bonds, and it will be the lowest bond issuance cost that you've ever had. Since it's not an open sale, it's a direct sale to us, so it's low cost. But these programs that we offer, the financial assistance programs, the majority of them are revolving programs. So as we're paying money out to communities for infrastructure projects, communities are paying back into the revolving program. So that's required if you're a city to issue bonds. So that's something that the city should talk to their financial community or their financial analyst or their budget operator and make sure they're prepared for bond issuance. Now, the preferred method for all systems, though, is if you have the ability to issue bonds, that's our preferred method. Many organizations that we work with don't have the ability to issue bonds, water supply corporations, for instance. We have loan agreements, basically similar to a mortgage, a home mortgage or something like that is a loan agreement if you don't have the ability to issue bonds. Key funding points, Texas is blessed with AAA credit rating. That's important for our state dollar programs. If a community, the local system, does not have a credit rating from Standard & Poor's or Fitch or one of those agencies, or if they have a poor rating, they can piggyback on Texas AAA credit rating to get the lowest interest rate for the state dollar programs. We have projects or funding to accommodate all sizes of projects. But the bottom box, the purple one, project phases are eligible. Our funding is usually specified for a project. We talk about funding a project. So what's a project? That's going to be something very specific in nature, something you would find in a master plan, an asset management plan, a capital improvements plan, something along those lines, infrastructure related. A new well, a new treatment plant, line work, lift stations, clarifiers, any of those type of kind of fixed assets that you would find in a master plan, that's the type of projects that we can fund. But those projects can be broken into phases. Planning and design are eligible expenses for our funding. Acquisition, if a community needs to purchase land for a treatment plant or a well site or right-of-way project, something like that, we can finance the land purchase. And then construction. And then construction can be new construction, new facilities and equipment, or it can be rehabilitation and repair of existing facilities. And we do a lot of that type of work, improvements and rehabilitation of existing infrastructure. We always hear about the aging infrastructure details in the news media. So those can be, all those different phases can be broken up into the funding, or the local community can mix and match their local dollars if they would like. We'll be the most flexible banking institution you've ever worked with as a local water system, local community. You can come in just for planning and design funding, or you can come in only for construction. Most communities we work with, though, come in for a turnkey project. They come in with an idea, something in a master plan, and they want to see that from start to finish, a turnkey project, and that's fine too. But we do have that flexibility to work with the local entity. Eligible projects, just about anything a drinking water or wastewater system deals with on a daily basis. We can't finance operation and maintenance costs, but any type of capital work. Water meters, transmission lines, future water needs, water rights. On the flood programs we'll talk about, even flood control, dam, and infrastructure and warning systems, we have some funds available for that also. And we'll talk about that when we talk about the flood program. How does it work? In general, this is how it works. I mentioned we function on a state fiscal year cycle, an annual cycle. That's September 1 through the following August of next year. So we're coming up to September 1, 25, a new fiscal year for us. That triggers an application season, an open solicitation period where we receive applications. That usually starts in December of every year, where the different variety of programs have an open solicitation period. We collect applications starting in December through the spring of the following year. Usually March is a big deadline. Those applications, though, are short form applications. We call it a project information form for the federal programs, and an abridged application for the state dollar programs. Those applications are received, they're reviewed, and they're ranked by merit order. Especially on the grant programs, we get so many applications, we have to turn some communities away. And so we rank those applications by merit order. The top scored applications are the ones that are most likely to receive the funding. That comes out during that, we're going through a review and ranking process currently. We produce a report called the Intended Use Report. All these different programs in this booklet, the first few pages are federal programs. Towards the back are the state dollar programs. Most of these programs all have an IUP, an intended use plan, produced from them. The IUP is the program document or report that shows how we're using these federal funds, policies, deadlines, timelines, all the details of that funding program. But it also lists the rankings of those applications that we receive. They're ranked in numeric order, 1 through 200, or how many ever applications we received. And so you can see communities who've applied for this funding, their score, and a little bit of project description, what they were applying for. That's just a really great document that explains the program. And I highly encourage you to find a copy of it on our website. Have some direct links to the intended use plan and other reports coming up at the end. But that's just a really great resource to have as you're applying for the program. The intended use plan is produced by program, by individual funding program, and it's also produced by the fiscal year cycle. So we receive the applications, we produce the intended use plan, we take a public comment on those applications and the program itself. When that's finalized, then we publish the intended use plan, and that becomes that cycle's document, policy requirement document for that period. When I say that period, remember I said we function on a state fiscal year, so we receive applications on a fiscal year cycle. We produce the intended use plan on a fiscal year cycle. All of those documents and reports kind of stay bundled together through the process until we exhaust all the funds for that year. Things that change from year to year on that fiscal year cycle, sometimes deadlines can change. Dollar amounts always change. What's available to the local communities, that always changes from year to year. There's some consistencies, but they can change from year to year. Policies, programs, requirements, those details can and often do change from year to year. And I'll give you some great examples of that when we move forward. But this is in general how the timeline and the process looks. Short form, review and rank, produce the ranking report in the intended use plan, and then we just repeat the cycle the following year. A little bit detailed information, that project solicitation period starts in that December to March timeline. We do review and rank as we just talked about, and then we produce this finalized intended use plan. That's step one. That's just to get the local utility in the queue, so to speak, with a short form project information form or a bridged application. That's just a little bit of information with a scope of work and a line item budget, how much money the local utility's requesting. So that's going to be things like your planning and permitting cost, feasibility studies, any other planning and design work, consultant fees for professional services such as an attorney, bond counsel, financial analyst, engineer, all those details can be caught in a line item budget. And that line item budget with a scope of work must be signed and sealed by a professional engineer just to apply, just to submit step one, the project information form or the abridged application. It's kind of a quality control check, making sure we're getting good, accurate information on these applications. Step two then, the Water Development Board will invite the top scored project information forms and abridged applications. And so those applications that receive those like top 20, top 30 or so points or application scores, then they're invited by email and a letter from the Water Development Board to move forward in the process into step two. Step two is really the formal process. You're providing all the documentation that you need to issue bonds and take on debt for your local utility. Also, all those documents for the self-reporting data on water loss, water conservation, water use, those all have to be updated here. The good news about step two, the local utility, the loan applicant, the funding applicant knows at step two they're working toward a loan closing. At step two, you know that the Water Development Board has determined it's a viable project, it's viable scope-wise, it's viable financially, and we're trying to move towards closing. And at loan closing, you know the percentage of grant that the utility's requesting, you'll know those details, and you'll know the loan details. So you're doing just a little bit of short work on step one just to get in the queue. Step two, if you're invited by letter and email, then you're working towards a loan closing, dollars in hand to actually do your project. From that project solicitation to dollars in hand, 18 months, can be longer. 2 years is not uncommon, depending on the readiness of the applicant, the readiness of the community, the utility, how ready they are to move forward into a construction project, and then also if they have all of their documentation ready and prepared. Also, the step two process, I mentioned at step one, you have to have a professional engineer just to sign and seal those project information forms and the abridged applications. If you receive an invitation to move forward in step two with the formal process, that would be the time to hire all your professional services. Typically, communities hire a bond counsel, an attorney, a financial analyst, and a consulting engineer just to complete the formal process and work towards that loan closing. But most professional services that we work with realize that most communities don't have upfront money to pay those services, so they can request those fees at loan closing. So they know they can help you with their services, but then they'll get funded at loan closing. At loan closing, that's our formal, they slam the gavel, the money is yours. And we'll talk about how the money works next, coming up. Mention too, we focus on a fiscal year cycle. Some programs are available every year, some programs are not. It just depends. Things change from year to year, fiscal year to fiscal year. And in fact, in some of the documentation in this booklet, one of the first statements or so, it says, funds available upon legislative appropriations. So that means some years we may have funding for that particular program, some years we don't. Talk just about water planning and flood supply planning. If you participate in the planning groups, you're rewarded with an opportunity to apply for the SWIFT fund, state dollar program tied to water supply planning. Water supply planning is unique in Texas. The state's divided into regions. Regions produce a local regional water plan. The state then rolls that local plan into the state plan. Locals know the best about their situations, their information, their dynamics, and so they produce the regional plan, and the Water Development Board takes those regional plans and rolls them up. Map of the regions. Highly encourage you to pick up one of the postcards and get involved in your regional planning process. We've been doing water supply planning since the 1950s. It's a well-defined and documented process and procedure. Now flood planning is pretty new. We just recently, last August, adopted the very first state flood plan. But the flood planning process is very similar to the water supply planning process. The state's divided up into regions. Regions produce their own regional plan. The Water Development Board then rolls those region plans up into the state level plan. This particular program is the Flood Infrastructure Fund, a state dollar program. Again, to access these programs or these dollars through the FIF, the Flood Infrastructure Fund, you have to participate in the flood planning process. Those are the only two programs that are that way. SWIFT and FIF are the only two that have that direct link to the planning processes, and then you're rewarded. The local utility or local community is rewarded with additional funding opportunities if they participate in the planning processes. This is the one that's coming up and talked about a lot of media attention. Senate Bill 7 and House Joint Resolution 7 Governor Abbott signed this legislation during the regular session of the state legislature. It goes to voter approval in November. Basically, it will have a revenue stream for the Texas Water Development Board for state dollar water projects. It will be $1 billion a year for the next 20 years, annually for the next 20 years for water supply projects, broken up into 50% of the projects need to be new water supply, things like desalination and utilizing brackish water, more reuse and green type projects would be considered new water supplies, and then 50% broken into aging infrastructure. Really trying to address high water loss. My colleague was here earlier talking about the water loss threshold and the water loss issues that many drinking water systems face. So this program will have 50-50 split between that aging infrastructure and then 50% new water supply. So stay tuned for more information about this. The Water Development Board's communications team wrote a great article on July 9th. If you type in Texas Water Newsroom, TWDB for July 9th, you'll see the article and explain some of the details about this program and what it can be used for as far as eligibility projects, but mainly drinking water supply projects. Texas Water Development Board or Water Development Fund. These next few slides are the programs that I wanted to highlight today about what's available. Again, these programs, new legislation, but this program is our oldest fund. You can do drinking water or wastewater projects within this particular fund. State dollar program, pretty easy to access, 100% loan though. Applications are accepted year-round pretty much for this program. We tally the grand total, those application dollars, then we go out and issue bonds using that total sum. It takes about, again, 18 months for this program to give you financing. Applications are received up until the end of the year, December 31, and then we just sell bonds based on that grand total and then loan out those proceeds. 20 or 30-year terms, we're looking at about 4% interest rates. We're a bank just like any bank, so interest rates will fluctuate, of course, based on market conditions. Most of these also tell you if it's a bond or loan agreement. You can see that, who's eligible, political subdivisions. And then something else that's important, though, is the loan pledge, the type of pledge. Most communities tie the loan repayment to water or sewer rates, but you don't have to. Any type of taxation revenue can be used as loan repayment pledge. Or if you're a large water wholesaler, you can use contract revenue sales as loan pledge repayments. These are the grants. divided up into clean water and drinking water state revolving funds. These are federal funds through the Environmental Protection Agency, through EPA. All 50 states and U.S. territories participate in the state revolving fund programs. Water Development Board is the administrator for Texas. Grants, how do you get the grants? There's about 30 different data points. In that intended use plan that I was hyping so earlier during the timeline, that document that lists all the details of the program, there's always an Appendix C. Appendix C has the numeric rating values listed in it. So it will give you economic conditions and how many points are available for that. Health and safety violations and how many points are available for that. And all the different criteria that are listed there in that rating criteria Appendix C. To get the grant, some of the primary conditions are economic conditions. If you are considered a disadvantaged economic community, that's a big criteria. If you have TCEQ violations or permit issues, that's a big criteria. If you're rural, away from an urban center, you're considered rural. And then if you're a small system, and small system is based on two definitions, 10,000 people or less, or very small system, 1,000 people or less. Those are some of the highest point categories. To obtain the grants, the local utilities' goal is to score high points on your applications, just like baseball, basketball, anything. You want to score high on those project information forms and abridged applications. And you score high by addressing all those requirements listed in Appendix C, documenting how you or your project qualifies for those points. Again, applications that receive the highest scored points are the ones most likely to receive the funding through an invitation to us. A lot of details in these programs though, but those are some of the highlights. Drinking water is similar. There's one program specifically for wastewater or clean water. There's one program specifically for drinking water. You can apply to both programs if your utility does both water and wastewater. You can also see some of the details that are listed there, what was available for this current fiscal year that ends August 31 here in a few weeks. Future dollars will probably be similar, but there will be definite changes on those dollar capacities. Typically, there's a loan origination fee, some other details like maximum project financing and caveats like that. There's some subsets out of the drinking water and clean water needs programs. This is one for emerging contaminants. Most communities that are tapping into this emerging contaminant program know they have issues with constituents in their drinking water or wastewater, and they're looking for treatment solutions. EPA has a list of 66 constituents on their drinking water site. You have to be able to address one of those constituents to tap into this fund. But the neat thing about this, it's 100% principal forgiveness. Most of our grants are in the form of principal forgiveness. It's really unusual and rare to have a 100% grant or principal forgiveness loan. Most of the programs all come with a loan component. Most of them are 30% loan component and 70% grant for this current fiscal year. Again, that's something that can change also in the future. Don't expect it to for the upcoming fiscal year, but it's a possibility. Lead service line, that's been a big issue in drinking water systems the last few years. Most communities are moving into line replacement. We have some funding available for this particular program for lead service line replacement. Again, most communities have turned in their inventory to TCEQ, and now they're looking for funds to remove these service lines. Almost 50-50, 49% loan, 59% grant. Again, these applications were coming up for solicitation period December through the spring of 2026. What I'm showing you here is for last year. It was due April 4th of 2025. And remember, we just repeat these cycles annually, so the next year, the next application period will be coming up in the spring of 26. Asset management program for small systems. This is where we have these next two slides where you have partnered with consulting engineering firms to provide professional services to develop an asset management program or help with technical assistance. Communities that apply for this are typically economically distressed communities that just don't have any resources. So far, we've been able to help about 40 communities with this program. Communities apply for this, and then we partner them with consulting engineering firms to help them develop an asset management program. Right now, just last week, the application solicitation opened for this program, and it ends later in September, where we have a request for qualifications for consulting engineers. If they want to be a consulting firm partnering with us, we have that qualification open, and then we're also accepting applications from the local communities to help them with an asset management program. This next program is also very similar. Again, we've partnered with consulting engineering firms. This solicitation period most likely will happen in the fall. But we've, again, partnered with consulting engineering firms. They can come out and help with a variety of tasks for technical assistance. Conservation plans, helping with the project information forms and abridged applications, our funding applications, they can help with that. Rate studies, other training requirements. The only cost to the local utilities for these two programs are labor hours. There's no dollar cost to them, but they're required to do 80 hours worth of labor service or in-kind service to help with the management of these programs and these consulting contracts. Again, it's kind of these two are fairly new programs. Hope that they will grow in scope and value as far as what's available. Currently, they're designed to help about 40 communities annually. Program requirements. For the federal program requirements and the state dollar programs, the federal dollar programs, the SRF funding, if you've done any kind of federal procurement processes, that's what this slide is showing, that you have to comply with Davis-Bacon wage rate, Buy America, Build America, where construction and project materials have to be sourced in the U.S., disadvantaged business enterprise for fair federal procurement processes, very similar to other federal programs if you've worked on those in the past as far as requirements. State dollar programs have some requirements also, but they're not as intensive as the federal, but we do have the U.S. Iron and Steel and state level environmental reviews, and then all communities that work with us have to adopt a conservation plan. Helpful tips. What could you do today to help your community prepare for that solicitation period that's coming up in the fall? We always want to see an independent audit. That slows communities down if they don't have a recent independent audit. If they don't have the independent audit, it will prevent them from receiving the funds in that formal application process. The application will be deemed administratively incomplete. If you're a water supply corporation, we can accept Internal Revenue Service Form 990. That's an IRS form for nonprofits, and water supply corporations are typically classified as a nonprofit. We can use that in lieu of an audit. But if you're a water supply corporation and use that form, the 990 form, you're capped at $1 million. If you do an independent audit as a water supply corporation, you can remove that cap. But those are things you can do now. Registering with the SAM system, the ability to take on debt, you want to make sure your water rates are sustainable. If you're going to tie loan repayments to water and sewer rates, again, you don't have to, most communities do, but you want to make sure your rates are sustainable for the operation and maintenance of your system. And then, if you're going to use that as loan repayment, you want to tie those to the rates also, because we're going to analyze those. Isn't it up to date on your self-reporting data for drinking water system on loss, use, and conservation? And finally, talk with me and my team. We're here to help and answer questions. We have a lot of great resources on our website, some video recordings, guide booklets, frequently asked questions. And then we also do in-person funding workshops. Somewhere in the state, we do an in-person workshop. I'll be in Post, Texas later this month near Lubbock, and then we'll be in Italy, Texas, the city of Italy on Interstate 35 north of Waco in September. We have scheduled events all the way through the end of the year, and we're working on 2026. That workshop schedule is available on our website. Next few slides, just some direct links about information that I've spoken about this morning. We have a great website, but we do such a variety of things with Water Development Board, just some helpful links directly to take you there. The different programs we offer, technical assistance, interactive state water plan, flooding information, and then the self-reporting information for drinking water systems and water loss, water use, and conservation. And then give a shout out to our sister agency, TCEQ, and their FMT program. Great technical assistance program that's free for drinking water and wastewater systems. They can come out to your local system, give you some really great evaluations on financial information, operations and management of your system. I just think it's just a great program. You've heard me mention asset management numerous times. Asset managements, we're pro on that. If you can document that your utility is using an asset management plan, that gives you points in the scoring system on your applications. It's a way to get your scores up. We will accept TCEQ's asset management program as an asset management plan. This program is some Excel worksheets, and they have a lot of guidebooks and things like that to help you develop your own asset management plan. TWIC is state and federal agencies that have water-related infrastructure funding. So Water Development Board, Texas Department of Agriculture, USDA, Rural Development Program, all those are members of TWIC, have a great resource guide. I always like to shout out to the Texas Warren Mutual Aid folks. They're down in the exhibit booth, and then links to EPA. And finally, Water Development Board newsletter, great way to stay up to date on solicitation dates especially. When open solicitation periods happen, you'll be notified through the newsletter on those type of details. So that wraps up my presentation. I hope you learned a little bit about Water Development Board funding. Again, the three big takeaways: we function on a state fiscal year. We always have some money available. Some years we have a lot of money available, and that looks like that will be coming up soon, hopefully. And then we repeat the cycle again the next year. So just keep us in mind for your infrastructure funding as you're thinking about something near term and long term. So any questions?
So Scott, just a quick question. For the state revolving fund for the 2026 state fiscal year, the intended use plans, are those going to be out for public notice soon to start public comment period?
Yes. The question was, are the intended use plan for this current cycle, will it be published soon? And the answer is yes. The timeline that I showed on my flow chart showed August or summer maybe, and we hope to have that published this month, hopefully no later than September. That is the goal that my colleagues and staff are working on today, to get those documents published and available for public comment by the end of August. Sometimes, as you know, though, timelines are subject to change, so just keep that as a caveat. But it's September or August-September timeframe.
I just wanted to say that we got to use the root tap this year, and it has been an excellent experience. Nothing but good things to say about it.
Wonderful. That's
Them
good.
helping us with the rate plan, helping us with just a lot of different things. So I strongly recommend, if you've never done any funding, to go through that process first, because they've got us much more prepared.
Wonderful. Good news.
So we got a few questions from some virtual attendees. First one is, do you have an available list of consultants and contractors to get estimates for work needed, i.e. replacement of old distribution lines?
I think the question was, do we have a list of vendors and contractors that we can recommend? As a state agency, we really don't recommend personal or recommendations for vendors and material suppliers. However, typically our funding is with the local community, the local city, the water district, water supply corporation, so that would be their bidding processes and practices to select those consultants and vendors using their procurement processes, and then also following state and federal procurement processes too.
Gotcha. Next question is, we are a very small WSC, 45 connections with less than 150 population. Are there programs for emergency funding for unexpected expenses?
Oh, that is a great question. The question was, they're a small system, they're asking about emergency funding. And that's something that I usually try to mention at the beginning of my presentation, and I failed to. The Water Development Board does not have emergency response funding, unfortunately. Most of our funding is available for projects, again, like found in a master plan, a capital improvements plan, something that's kind of long-term and been thought out. We don't have anything for natural disaster, or even if a utility says a water main break or something like that, we don't have that quick turnaround emergency funding. However, those events, especially if it's a disaster declared, presidential or governor declared disaster, that gives you points in the rating criteria system. And again, remember, you're trying to score as highly as possible in that point system. So those type of events, as they don't give you money quicker for us, it does help you obtain possibly long-term funding.
And last question states, is there anything for IOU, very small system?
Yes, investor-owned utilities, it depends on the project. It depends. Most of our programs are set up for political subdivisions, but it depends on the project because an IOU often is operating as a public water system. And so if it's a public benefit, there can be some options to work with that investor-owned utility. Just kind of have to base every project on its merits and work through those details.